A black single father stood in line at a grocery store on a rainy Thursday evening, counting dollar bills for the third time. Not because he didn't know how much money he had, because he was hoping the number would somehow change. It didn't. $38. $38.16. That was everything Marcus Reed had until next Friday. The cashier scanned the last item. Milk, bread, eggs, peanut butter, generic cereal, a box of macaroni. The kind of groceries that said less about what a family wanted and more about what they could afford. Marcus looked down at the little girl standing beside him. His daughter, Ava, was 8 years old, wearing bright yellow rain boots and a pink jacket that had belonged to her cousin 2 years earlier. "Daddy," she whispered, tugging his sleeve. "Can we still get ice cream this weekend?" Marcus smiled instantly. The smile came automatically now. Parents learned to do that. "No promises," he said softly. "But we'll see." Ava nodded seriously. She accepted this answer because children who grow up around struggle often learn early not to ask too many questions. The cashier announced the total. $37.84. Marcus exhaled quietly. Just enough. Barely. He paid in cash. As he packed the groceries into reusable bags, he heard the woman behind him sigh impatiently. Some people always sighed when customers paid with cash. Marcus ignored it. He had learned years ago that dignity was often a private decision. Outside, rain hammered the parking lot. Marcus balanced 4 grocery bags in one hand while holding Ava's hand with the other. Their car sat alone near the edge of the lot. A 14-year-old Honda Civic with faded paint, a cracked tail light, and an engine that made sounds no engine should make. It wasn't pretty, but it still got them home. Most days. As Marcus loaded groceries into the trunk, Ava climbed into the back seat. "Daddy." "Yeah, baby? When Mommy comes back, can we get a bigger car?" Marcus froze. Only for half a second. Long enough. Children notice things adults believe they hid well. Ava's mother hadn't gone away. She had died 3 years earlier. Cancer. Fast. Cruel. 1 year Marcus had a wife. The next year he was attending grief counseling while learning how to braid hair from YouTube videos. "Mommy isn't coming back, sweetheart," Marcus said gently. Ava looked down. "I know." Silence. Then, "I just miss her." Marcus closed the trunk. "So do I." Neither of them spoke during the drive home. They didn't need to. Grief had become another member of the family. Always present. Always quiet. Marcus worked 2 jobs. During the day, he taught history at Jefferson Middle School. At night, 3 evenings a week, he drove for rideshare companies. Not because he wanted extra money. Because without it, they wouldn't survive. Teaching paid enough to keep them poor with dignity. The rideshare work covered everything else. School supplies. Unexpected bills. Growing children. Life. By the time Marcus finally tucked Ava into bed that night, it was nearly 10 o'clock. "Daddy." "Yeah. You forgot story night." Marcus looked at the calendar hanging beside her bed. Tuesday. Story night. He had forgotten. Again. Guilt settled heavily inside him. "I'm sorry, baby." Ava smiled. "It's okay. Tomorrow?" Marcus sat beside her. "Tomorrow." She studied him carefully. "You look tired." Marcus laughed softly. "I am tired. You should sleep more." "That's excellent advice." "I know." Marcus kissed her forehead. "Good night." "Love you, Daddy." "Love you more." After she fell asleep, Marcus sat alone in the kitchen. The apartment was small. 2 bedrooms. 2nd floor. A neighborhood people politely described as improving. The rent had increased twice in 2 years anyway. Marcus opened his laptop. Bills. Electricity. Car insurance. Medical debt from Ava's emergency appendectomy last year. Credit cards. The numbers never stopped. Neither did the stress. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. Marcus almost ignored it. Almost. Instead, he answered. "Hello? Mr. Marcus Reed?" "Yes. My name is Evelyn Hart. I'm calling from Hart and Sinclair family offices. We represent Ms. Eleanor Sinclair." Marcus frowned. "I think you have the wrong number." "We do not." Marcus waited. The woman continued. "Ms. Sinclair would like to meet you." Marcus blinked. "I'm sorry. I don't know who that is." Silence. Then, "Ms. Eleanor Sinclair is the CEO of Sinclair International Holdings." Marcus still said nothing, because that information meant absolutely nothing to him. The woman sounded mildly surprised. "She's listed among the wealthiest women in America." Oh, another pause. Why would she want to meet me? Ms. Sinclair prefers to discuss that personally. Marcus laughed. I'm a middle school teacher. We're aware. I think there's been some mistake. There is not. Marcus rubbed his forehead. What exactly is this regarding? I'm afraid I can't discuss details over the phone. Ms. Sinclair would like to invite you to lunch this Saturday at 1 o'clock. Marcus almost declined. People like him did not receive mysterious invitations from billionaires. People like him received collection calls. But something about the woman's confidence unsettled him. Why me? Saturday. 1 o'clock. The Grand Regency Hotel. A car will be sent. The line disconnected. Marcus stared at the phone. Then laughed again. Scam. Had to be. Absolutely a scam. Saturday arrived. Marcus had nearly forgotten about the call. Until a black luxury sedan pulled into the apartment complex at exactly 12:15. Neighbors immediately began peeking through curtains. The driver stepped out. Mr. Reed. Marcus stared. You actually came. Yes, sir. Marcus looked back toward his apartment. Ava stood in the doorway. Daddy, are you famous? No, baby. Then why is Batman's car here? Marcus couldn't help smiling. Mrs. Henderson from apartment 14 had agreed to babysit. After promising Ava he'd bring back dessert, Marcus reluctantly climbed into the sedan. The Grand Regency was unlike any place Marcus had ever entered. Crystal chandeliers, marble floors, fresh flowers everywhere. The air itself smelled expensive. Marcus instantly felt underdressed. Dark jeans, clean button-down shirt, old shoes polished carefully the night before. He suddenly wished he'd worn a tie. A hostess approached immediately. Mr. Reed. Marcus nodded cautiously. This way, please. She escorted him through the restaurant toward a private dining area overlooking the city skyline. And there she was, Eleanor Sinclair. She looked to be in her early 40s. Elegant, composed, extraordinarily beautiful. Not in a glamorous magazine way. In a dangerous way. The kind of woman who looked as though she'd never lost an argument in her life. She stood when Marcus approached. Mr. Reed. Her voice was calm, confident. Thank you for coming. Marcus sat slowly. I'm still not entirely sure why I'm here. For the first time, Eleanor smiled. It's refreshing to meet someone who doesn't already know exactly who I am. A waiter appeared instantly. Menus arrived. Marcus barely looked at his. He couldn't pronounce half the items. Eleanor noticed. Without embarrassment or pity, she quietly ordered for both of them. Marcus appreciated that more than he expected. After the waiter left, silence settled between them. Marcus finally spoke. Okay. Eleanor folded her hands. Okay. Why am I here? Eleanor studied him. Long enough that Marcus grew uncomfortable. Then she said something that made absolutely no sense. I've been investigating you for 4 months. Marcus stared. I'm sorry, what? You teach history. Volunteer twice a month at a youth center. You've never missed a child support hearing despite no longer needing to attend them. You coach your daughter's soccer team despite not understanding soccer. Marcus blinked repeatedly. That's unsettling. Eleanor nodded. Fair. Did you hire someone to follow me? Yes. Marcus leaned back. That's insane. It was necessary. For what? For the first time since he'd arrived, something changed in Eleanor's expression. Not weakness. Not exactly. But something close. My grandfather's will. Marcus frowned. What does your grandfather have to do with me? Eleanor looked directly into his eyes. Everything. She reached into her designer bag, removed a thick folder, placed it gently on the table, then said the sentence that would change Marcus Reed's life forever. My grandfather left me $6 billion. Marcus said nothing, because people rarely know how to respond when someone casually mentions $6 billion. Eleanor continued. But there was one condition. Marcus slowly looked down at the folder. What condition? Eleanor's voice remained perfectly steady. I must be legally married within 90 days. Marcus blinked. Once. Twice. Then laughed. Because obviously this was a joke. Eleanor did not laugh. Marcus slowly stopped. You're serious? Completely. Marcus looked at her. Then the folder. Then back at her. Okay. Long pause. What does this have to do with me? Eleanor held his gaze. My advisors selected hundreds of candidates. She paused. I selected one. Another pause. You. Marcus stared at her. The entire restaurant suddenly felt very quiet. I think, Marcus said carefully, you've officially lost your mind. Eleanor pushed the folder toward him. Inside is a proposal. Marcus looked down. The words on the front page froze him instantly. Marriage compensation agreement. And directly underneath it, compensation, $500,000. Marcus hadn't even opened the contract yet. But something deep inside him was already telling him this was going to cost far more than money. Marcus stared at the number again. $500,000. $500,000. For a marriage. No, not a marriage. A contract. There was a difference. A very important difference. Marcus slowly pushed the folder back across the table. I appreciate the offer, he said carefully, but absolutely not. Eleanor didn't look surprised. Would you at least read it first? No. Mr. Reed. Marcus. She nodded. Marcus. Most people would read the contract before refusing $500,000. Marcus folded his hands. Most people don't have an 8-year-old daughter waiting for them at home. That caught her attention. You believe this would affect her negatively. It would affect her at all, Marcus said. That's enough. Eleanor remained silent. Marcus continued. You had someone investigate me for 4 months. Then you invited me to a hotel and offered me money to marry you. Respectfully, Miss Sinclair, normal people don't do that. A small smile appeared. I've been accused of many things. Normal has never been one of them. Marcus almost smiled back. Almost. Instead, he stood. I think we're done. Eleanor spoke before he could leave. My grandfather believed wealth destroys character. Marcus paused. He spent his entire life building Sinclair International. By the time he died, he trusted almost no one. Marcus slowly sat back down. Not because he cared about billionaires. Because he recognized that tone. It was grief. He knew grief. Eleanor continued. He believed people treated me differently because of money. He wasn't wrong. No offense, Marcus said. But he probably wasn't. None taken. She looked out the window for a moment. When he rewrote his will 2 years before his death, he added conditions. Marcus said nothing. He said I could only inherit if I built a real family. Marcus frowned. A real family? He specifically stated that the marriage could not involve anyone connected to business, politics, inherited wealth, or social circles already associated with the Sinclair name. Marcus blinked. Your grandfather made a list? Several lists. That's insane. He was 93. Still insane. Eleanor nodded. Also true. For the first time, the conversation felt almost normal. Almost. Why me? Marcus asked again. This time Eleanor answered immediately. Because every report said the same thing. Marcus waited. That you couldn't be bought. Marcus laughed. That's ironic considering you're literally trying to buy me. Exactly. Marcus frowned. Eleanor leaned forward. You've spent 3 years raising your daughter alone. You turned down a higher-paying private school position because it required relocating, and Ava wanted to stay near her friends. You've repeatedly chosen family over money. Marcus's expression hardened. My daughter isn't part of this conversation. I know. Do you? Eleanor held his gaze. Yes. Marcus looked away first. Because despite everything, she seemed sincere. That bothered him. Even if what you're saying is true, Marcus said, why not just marry someone you actually love? Something unreadable crossed Eleanor's face. Then disappeared. Love, she said quietly, has not historically gone well for me. Marcus did not ask for details. Everyone had wounds. Some were simply more expensive. The waiter returned with lunch. Neither of them touched it immediately. Marcus finally opened the folder. If I read this, he said, I'm not agreeing to anything. Understood. The first pages looked exactly like what he expected. Legal language. Financial terms. Duration. Confidentiality clauses. Public appearance requirements. Separate residences permitted. Annual reviews. Marcus kept reading. Then stopped. His eyes narrowed. He read the paragraph again. Then a third time. Slowly. Very slowly. Finally, he looked up. Eleanor. Yes. What exactly is Section 12? For the first time all afternoon, Eleanor hesitated. Marcus tapped the page. This part. Silence. Then, my grandfather added that himself. Marcus read aloud. In the event minor children are involved, full temporary guardianship rights shall transfer to Mrs. Eleanor Sinclair for the duration of the marriage agreement, should circumstances render the biological parent unable to fulfill responsibilities. Marcus looked up. His face had completely changed. The warmth was gone. So if something happens to me, he said quietly. You get Ava. Eleanor immediately shook her head. No. Marcus tapped the paper again. That's exactly what this says. It was included to satisfy trust attorneys. I don't care. Marcus. No. People at nearby tables glanced over. Marcus lowered his voice. But only barely. You investigated my life. Yes. You know my wife died. Yes. You know my daughter is all I have. Yes. Marcus closed the contract. Hard. Then you should have known this conversation was over the second I read that paragraph. He stood. Again. This time Eleanor stood too. Marcus, please. No. The clause can be removed. Marcus stopped. What? The attorneys included it because of inheritance complications. I can remove it. Marcus stared. Just like that? Yes. You'd rewrite your grandfather's will? No, she said. I'd challenge that section in court. Marcus studied her. Would you win? I always win. The answer came so quickly Marcus almost laughed. Instead, he shook his head. You really aren't used to hearing no, are you? Eleanor surprised him. Not often. That's a problem. I know. Marcus looked at the contract. Then at her. Then back at the contract. $500,000. His medical debt. Ava's college fund. A safer neighborhood. Reliable transportation. A future. Every problem in his life suddenly had a price tag, and someone was offering to pay it. He hated how tempting that felt. You know what bothers me most? Marcus asked. Eleanor waited. You don't know me. I know quite a bit about you. No. Marcus shook his head. You know information. Silence. You know where I work. You know where I live. You know what people say about me. He pointed toward his chest. You don't know me. Something in Eleanor's expression shifted. Again. Very slightly. My grandfather used to say something similar. Marcus stood. Your grandfather sounds like he was smarter than everybody around him. He usually was. Marcus extended his hand. I appreciate lunch. Eleanor looked at his hand. Then shook it. So that's your final answer? Marcus smiled politely. Yes. Then he walked away. The drive home felt surreal. Marcus spent most of it wondering whether he'd imagined the entire afternoon. By the time he reached the apartment complex, he'd almost convinced himself he had. Until Ava opened the door. Daddy! She wrapped her arms around him immediately. Mrs. Henderson smiled from the kitchen. Your daughter informed me 6 times that you were bringing dessert. Marcus winced. I forgot. Ava looked devastated. Marcus quickly crouched. But! Her eyes widened. I know a place that serves pancakes all day. 10 minutes later, they sat together in a small diner 3 blocks away. Ava happily drowned chocolate chip pancakes in syrup. Marcus watched her. Children had no idea how often they saved their parents. Daddy. If somebody gave you $1 million, what would you do? Marcus nearly choked on his coffee. That's random. Ava shrugged. I was thinking. Marcus smiled. I'd probably buy a house. A big house? No. A pool? No. A trampoline? Marcus considered. Definitely a trampoline. Ava nodded approvingly. Good. Marcus looked at her for a long moment. Then asked softly, what if getting the money meant changing our lives? Ava frowned. How? Marcus hesitated. Like pretending. She thought carefully. Children often answered life's hardest questions surprisingly quickly. Depends. On what? If pretending hurts people. Marcus looked away. Because adults complicated things. Children rarely did. 3 days later, Marcus arrived at school to discover the principal waiting outside his classroom. Marcus. Morning. Can I speak with you? Something about the man's expression immediately worried him. 10 minutes later, Marcus sat in the principal's office. Budget cuts. Declining enrollment. State funding reductions. The words blurred together. The conclusion didn't. Jefferson Middle School was eliminating positions. Marcus's contract would not be renewed next year. 9 months. That was how long he had left. 9 months before he lost the career he loved. 9 months before health insurance disappeared. 9 months before everything became uncertain. Again, Marcus drove home in silence that afternoon. The apartment felt smaller than usual. The bills on the kitchen counter looked larger. He sat alone for nearly an hour after Ava went to bed. Finally, just after midnight, he opened a desk drawer. Inside sat Eleanor Sinclair's business card. He stared at it for a very long time. Then, against every instinct he possessed, Marcus picked up the phone and called. Eleanor answered on the second ring, as if she'd been expecting it. Marcus. He frowned. How did you know it was me? A pause. Then, I was hoping. Marcus closed his eyes. I haven't changed my answer. Then why are you calling? Marcus looked toward Ava's bedroom. I want to read the contract. Silence. Then Eleanor said quietly, come to my office tomorrow. Marcus almost hung up. But he didn't. Because somewhere deep inside him, the impossible had just become possible. Marcus Reed had never been inside a corporate headquarters before. At least not one like this. Sinclair International occupied the top 30 floors of a glass tower overlooking downtown Chicago. The building itself looked less like an office and more like the headquarters of a government agency. Everything was polished. Everything was quiet. Everything felt expensive. Marcus stood in the lobby wearing the nicest clothes he owned. Dark slacks, blue button-down shirt, black jacket, the same shoes he'd worn to his wife's funeral. He suddenly felt underdressed anyway. The receptionist smiled. Good morning, Mr. Reed. Ms. Sinclair is expecting you. Of course she was. People like Eleanor Sinclair didn't wait for anyone. A private elevator carried him to the 47th floor. The doors opened directly into what appeared to be an entire executive suite. Floor-to-ceiling windows, original artwork, fresh orchids, an office larger than Marcus's entire apartment. And standing beside the windows was Eleanor. She turned as he entered. Good morning, Marcus. Marcus looked around. Do you own all this? Eleanor glanced around her office. No. Marcus looked confused. I own the building. Marcus stared. She smiled faintly. That joke never gets old. It wasn't funny. It wasn't meant to be. Marcus shook his head. This is exactly why normal people are suspicious of billionaires. For the first time, Eleanor laughed. Actually laughed. It changed her face completely. For a moment, she looked younger. Human. Then the expression disappeared. Coffee, she asked. Please. They sat at a small conference table, rather than her enormous desk. Marcus appreciated that. It felt less like a negotiation, more like a conversation. Almost. A legal team entered moments later. 3 attorneys, 2 financial advisors, 1 older gentleman carrying several binders. Marcus immediately became uncomfortable. Eleanor noticed. Everyone except Mr. Calloway can leave. The room froze. 1 attorney spoke carefully. Ms. Sinclair, with respect. Leave. Nobody argued. Within seconds, only Marcus, Eleanor, and the older gentleman remained. Mr. Calloway has represented my family for 31 years, Eleanor explained. He's staying. The older man smiled warmly. Please call me Henry. Marcus nodded. Marcus. Henry opened a binder. Mr. Reed, Ms. Sinclair has authorized substantial changes to the agreement. Marcus folded his arms. Let's hear them. For nearly 2 hours, they reviewed the contract. Every clause. Every condition. Every expectation. Marcus took notes. Asked questions. Rejected language he didn't like. Demanded clarification. Henry seemed impressed. Eleanor seemed amused. Finally, Marcus reached the section that mattered most. Ava. He looked directly at Eleanor. Nothing involving my daughter is negotiable. Agreed. I make all parental decisions. Agreed. She lives with me. Agreed. If she doesn't like this arrangement, it ends. For the first time, Henry looked surprised. Eleanor did not hesitate. Agreed. Marcus blinked. Just like that. Eleanor looked confused. She's your daughter. Marcus studied her. The answer seemed obvious to her. That surprised him. What exactly do you expect from this marriage? Marcus asked. Eleanor took a sip of coffee. Public appearances. How many? Perhaps 2 or 3 events each month. Live together? No. Share a bedroom? No. Marcus looked relieved. Eleanor noticed. That was important? Marcus looked horrified. We just met. Fair. Henry cleared his throat. There is one additional matter. Marcus immediately became suspicious. What matter? Henry looked uncomfortable. The marriage must appear authentic. Marcus frowned. What does that mean? Eleanor answered. It means people will be watching. Marcus waited. Investors. Board members. Media. Still waiting. Eleanor sighed. It means we occasionally need to look like a married couple. Marcus nearly choked on his coffee. You mean pretending? Essentially. Hand-holding. Sometimes. Marcus looked horrified. This gets worse every minute. For the second time, Eleanor laughed. Henry wisely said nothing. Marcus looked back at the contract. Then stopped. Again. Wait. He looked up. Why exactly does your grandfather care whether your marriage is real? Silence. Long silence. Eleanor looked toward the windows. Henry quietly closed his binder. Marcus suddenly understood. There was someone. Eleanor remained silent. Marcus continued carefully. Someone your grandfather didn't approve of. Still silence. Finally, Eleanor spoke. His name was Daniel. Her voice had changed. Completely. Marcus recognized it instantly. It was the voice people used when discussing old pain. We were engaged 6 years ago. Marcus said nothing. He worked for one of my companies. Another pause. My grandfather warned me. Marcus already knew where this story was going. He said Daniel loved the Sinclair name more than he loved me. Eleanor stared out the windows. I thought he was wrong. Marcus quietly asked, was he? Eleanor smiled. It was not a happy smile. Daniel left 3 weeks after signing a prenuptial agreement. Marcus looked away. Because some heartbreaks didn't require explanation. I haven't dated seriously since. Neither spoke for several seconds. Finally Marcus said quietly, that's a long time to be alone. Eleanor looked at him. You've been alone too. Marcus nodded. My wife died. I know. Stop saying that. Eleanor frowned. Saying what? I know. She looked genuinely confused. Marcus sighed. You know facts about me. He pointed toward himself. You don't know what it's like. Eleanor said nothing. Marcus looked down. When my wife was dying, Ava was 5. He rarely talked about this. Almost never. I spent months telling my little girl that mommy was getting better. His voice lowered. Because I couldn't figure out how to explain death to a child. Eleanor listened quietly. The night my wife died, Ava climbed into my bed and asked if God had made a mistake. Marcus swallowed. I still don't know how to answer that question. The room remained completely silent. Even Henry looked away. Finally, Eleanor spoke. My mother died when I was 12. Marcus looked up. She had never mentioned her mother. Car accident, Eleanor said quietly. My father buried himself in work. My grandfather raised me after that. Marcus suddenly understood something. All the money, the power, the confidence, none of it protected people from grief. Eleanor continued. People assume wealth makes loneliness easier. She looked directly at him. It doesn't. Neither spoke. For the first time since they'd met, there was no billionaire. No teacher. No proposal. Just 2 people who understood loss. Henry eventually cleared his throat. Perhaps we should continue. Marcus nodded. Business resumed. By late afternoon, only one issue remained. Compensation. Marcus hated discussing money. But he had to. I don't want the $500,000 up front. Both Eleanor and Henry looked surprised. What? Eleanor asked. Marcus took a breath. If we're doing this, I don't want Ava seeing money change me overnight. Henry adjusted his glasses. What are you proposing? Marcus had spent all night thinking about it. Half goes into a trust for Ava. Eleanor immediately nodded. Done. Marcus continued. The rest gets paid monthly. Why? Henry asked. Marcus smiled sadly. Because I want my daughter growing up believing her father still works. Eleanor stared at him. You would turn down immediate access to $250,000? Yes. Most people wouldn't. Marcus shrugged. I'm not most people. Eleanor looked away. Because for some reason, that answer affected her. The meeting ended shortly before 6. Marcus gathered his things. So? Eleanor asked. Marcus looked at the contract. Then at her. Then toward the city stretching beneath them. He thought about medical bills. About losing his teaching position. About Ava. About fear. About responsibility. Finally he extended his hand. Eleanor looked at it. Then shook it. Marcus took a deep breath. Okay. Eleanor's expression remained perfectly calm. But Marcus noticed something. Her grip tightened. Very slightly. Okay, she asked. Marcus nodded. We're getting married. The word sounded absurd. Completely absurd. Yet somehow real. Henry immediately opened another binder. Excellent. The wedding is in 12 days. Marcus froze. 12 days? Henry nodded. The will deadline is rapidly approaching. Marcus looked horrified. 12 days? Eleanor stood. I did mention 90 days. That was weeks ago. Exactly. Marcus rubbed his face. Oh, this is a terrible idea. Eleanor surprised him. Probably. Marcus looked up. Then why are we doing it? For the first time since they met, Eleanor didn't have an answer. That night, Marcus went to Eleanor's estate. Not for a meeting. Not for business. For answers. He found her alone in the library, sitting beside the fireplace with documents spread across the table. For the first time since they'd met, she looked tired. Not billionaire tired. Human tired. When Marcus entered, she looked up. You saw the headlines, she said quietly. Marcus nodded. Ava got hurt because of this. Eleanor lowered her eyes. I'm sorry. Marcus sat across from her. For a long moment, neither spoke. Finally, Eleanor pushed a document toward him. Marcus looked down. Dissolution agreement. You want a divorce? He asked. I want to give you a way out, Eleanor said softly. You never signed up for this. Marcus looked at her carefully. You really think I'd leave because things became difficult? You should. Marcus shook his head. You still don't understand. Eleanor frowned. What? This stopped being about money a long time ago. Silence. Marcus smiled faintly. Ava asked me something today. Eleanor waited. She asked if I liked you. Eleanor looked away immediately. Marcus continued. I couldn't answer her. Now Eleanor looked back. Why? Because I realized I wasn't pretending anymore. For the first time in weeks, Eleanor had no response. Marcus placed the divorce papers back on the table. I'm not signing these. Marcus? No. He leaned forward. I agreed to be your husband on paper. A small smile appeared on his face. Somewhere along the way, I forgot it was supposed to be fake. Eleanor looked at him for a long moment. Then very quietly she asked, What happens now? Marcus smiled. Tomorrow morning, you come over for pancakes. 1 year later, Marcus stood in the kitchen while Ava and Eleanor argued over pancake toppings. Chocolate chips are better, Ava insisted. Blueberries are healthier, Eleanor argued. That's rich people logic. Marcus laughed. Both of them turned. He was holding the original marriage contract. The same contract that had started everything. Marcus looked at it for a moment. Then he slowly tore it in half. Eleanor stared. You didn't have to do that. Marcus looked at her. Yes, I did. He dropped the torn pages into the trash. Ava looked confused. So, are you two still married? Marcus looked at Eleanor. Eleanor smiled and reached for his hand. For real this time, she said. Ava thought about this seriously. Then she nodded. Good. Because I already told everyone at school that she's my pancake stepmom. Marcus laughed. Eleanor laughed. And for the first time in years, the house felt exactly like home. Marcus Reed had accepted $500,000 to marry a woman he barely knew. That was how the story began. But stories rarely end where they start. Sometimes a contract becomes trust. Sometimes survival becomes family. And sometimes the person you agree to marry for money becomes the person you can't imagine living without.